Welcome to the Creative Commons RX podcast. Before diving into this episode, I want to ensure we're all on the same page. This is for general informational purposes only and does not constitute the practice of medicine, nursing, or other professional healthcare services, including the giving of medical advice. No doctor-patient or pharmacist-patient relationship is formed. Using this information and the materials linked to this podcast is at the user's risk. The content on this podcast is not intended to substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Users should not disregard or delay in obtaining medical advice from any medical condition they have, and they should seek the assistance of their healthcare professionals for any such conditions. Clinical experts created the references, content, and clinical insight. NotebookLM, a Google AI tool, created the audio content, which I extensively reviewed before release. Finally, the host states that he takes all conflicts of interest seriously. Currently, there are no conflicts to disclose. For all of his disclosures and the companies he invests in or advises, he directs users to reach out independently, where he keeps an up-to-date and active list of all disclosures.
Today, we're diving into something that's, well, a bit scary. It's about when the place you go to every day, your job, becomes the hazard itself. I want you to really picture this for a second. What if your workplace, a place you assume is safe, suddenly became a trap?
All right, let's ground this in a real story, because this stuff actually happens. Picture this. A 29-year-old bank teller is found inside a closed vault. She's in full cardiac arrest, completely pulseless. But here's the kicker. There's not a single scratch on her. No trauma, nothing. So what happened? It's a complete mystery.
So where do you even begin with a case like this? I mean, for the first responders showing up, it's like walking onto a crime scene, but the weapon is invisible. They have to start thinking like detectives.
You know, the biggest clue here is actually what's not there. No signs of trauma. That immediately tells investigators, okay, this wasn't a fall, it wasn't an attack. It points them straight towards something in the environment. And a confined space like a bank vault, that's a classic high-risk zone. See, simple gases like carbon dioxide, what we call asphyxiants, are heavier than air. They can literally fill up a room from the floor up, silently pushing all the oxygen out. You wouldn't even know it was happening.
But here's where it gets even more critical. This isn't just about solving one tragic mystery. This single patient, she's a clue. She's a warning sign for everyone else who works there.
And you might be thinking, how common is this really? Well, get this. About 5% of all calls to poison control centers are job-related. That's 1 in every 20. This isn't some rare, bizarre thing. This happens all the time.
So that leads to the million-dollar question for anyone in public health, right? How do you use one case to prevent a dozen more?
And the answer, the key to the whole thing, is a concept called the index case. In toxicology, that first poisoned worker, they're not just a patient. They are the canary in the coal mine. Their case is the first red flag that something in the work environment has gone terribly wrong for everybody. And that leads to this absolute non-negotiable principle. For any doctor or nurse who sees a patient like this, every single poisoned worker has to be considered an index case. It forces you to think beyond just treating the person in front of you. You have to ask, okay, who else is at risk? And get the ball rolling on an investigation to make sure nobody else gets hurt.
But the danger doesn't just stop when the victim is pulled out of that vault. Oh no, a whole new threat starts the second they're rescued, and it can follow them right through the hospital doors.
It's called secondary contamination, and it's exactly what it sounds like. The hazardous material on the victim's clothes, on their skin, gets transferred to the paramedics, to the ambulance, to the nurses, the doctors. The emergency room itself can become contaminated. The patient literally becomes a mobile hazard.
And this is not theoretical. It is devastatingly real. A classic, tragic example is the Tokyo subway sarin attack. So many victims, understandably, rushed straight to the nearest hospitals, bypassing any on-site decontamination. The result? The healthcare workers who were trying to save them got sick themselves from the nerve agent. It's a terrifying lesson in how easily this can spread.
So that's why decontaminating a patient right at the hospital is so critical. First, you stop the patient from absorbing any more of the poison. Second, and this is huge, you protect everyone else, the staff, other patients. And third, you keep the emergency department from having to shut down. Can you imagine your local ER closing because of contamination? It would be a public health disaster.
Okay, so what's the solution? It's the hospital's decontamination protocol. And I love this subtitle, the hospital airlock. It's the perfect way to think about it. It's this process that keeps the danger contained outside while the patient gets the care they desperately need on the inside.
And let's be clear, this is not a nice to have. It is an absolute must. Healthcare facilities have to be prepared for this. Why? Because victims don't always wait for a hazmat team. They just show up at the ER door, and the hospital has to be that last line of defense.
So what does this airlock actually look like? Well, it's a very organized process. First, you've got crowd control. You can't have people running everywhere, so you funnel them into a controlled area. Then triage. Who's the sickest? Who's the most contaminated? They go first. Next, and this is the big one, you get their clothes off, all of it. And finally, you wash them down with tons of water to get rid of whatever's left.
Okay, I want you to stop and really let this number sink in. 85%. That's how much of the contamination can be removed just by taking off a person's clothes. I mean, think about that. Before any fancy showers or special soaps, the most effective thing you can do is just remove their clothing. It's a simple action with an absolutely massive impact.
And this quote from the source material really sums it all up, doesn't it? This basic strip and flush procedure is powerful enough to pretty much eliminate the threat of secondary contamination. It's what makes it safe for the medical teams to finally do their job.
All right, so let's pull back from the emergency moment and look at the bigger picture. Because reacting to a disaster is one thing, but the real goal, it's having a system that's ready before the disaster even happens. That is the true power of preparedness.
A truly prepared hospital doesn't just have a plan in a binder somewhere. It's an active, living system. They know the chemical risks in their local community. They have a rock-solid plan for controlling contaminated patients. They've already picked out their decon zones, and here's the most important part. They have staff who are trained and who have already coordinated with agencies like Hazmat and the fire department. They are not exchanging business cards during a crisis. Because when you boil it all down, this is the first rule of toxicology. Before you can treat the poison, you have to stop the poisoning. You have to get the person away from the toxin, and you have to get the toxin off the person.
And this really highlights the two hats a clinician has to wear in these cases. It's a tough balancing act. On one side, you're focused like a laser on the patient in front of you. You're treating the poisoning, managing their symptoms, trying to save that one life. But at the exact same time, you have to have this other focus on the workplace. You have to help identify the source and prevent the next poisoning, because that's how you save many lives.
So that's what we're left with. One patient, one poisoned worker, can be a warning shot for so many others. A single case is a signal that something is dangerously wrong. And it really makes you wonder, doesn't it? Is your local hospital ready to hear that warning?
This is for general informational purposes only and does not constitute the practice of medicine, nursing, or other professional healthcare services, including the giving of medical advice. No doctor-patient or pharmacist-patient relationship is formed. Using this information and the materials linked to this podcast is at the user's risk. The content on this podcast is not intended to substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Users should not disregard or delay in obtaining medical advice from any medical condition they have, and they should seek the assistance of their healthcare professionals for any such conditions. Clinical experts created the references, content, and clinical insight. NotebookLM, a Google AI tool, created the audio content, which I extensively reviewed before release. Finally, the host states that he takes all conflicts of interest seriously. Currently, there are no conflicts to disclose. For all of his disclosures and the companies he invests in or advises, he directs users to reach out independently, where he keeps an up-to-date and active list of all disclosures.